Hey, all you experts out there, this is the Monetize Your Expertise podcast, where we show you how to use your skills to pay the bills. Have you ever wanted to create a business that positions you as the industry leader and go-to expert? Join me every week to hear from amazing leaders and entrepreneurs who have successfully refined their skills in order to become experts and create extremely profitable knowledge businesses. To find all of the links and tools mentioned in this episode, just go to myepodcast.com. I'm your host, Grant Weherley, the online course guy, helping you every week to monetize your expertise. Hey, podcast listeners. Today, I want to talk to you about travel. More specifically, running a business while you travel the world. And here's a bit of background. I've been living abroad for the past 2 years or so, primarily around Southeast Asia. And I get asked all of the time from other people, friends, family, entrepreneurs who ask about what that's like. And a lot of them say, I wish I could do that. There's a sense of like longing and this sort of daydreamy, like, oh, that would be so nice. And a lot of people who do travel the world and run a business, they're kind of flashy about it. They put out nice, flashy pictures of them smiling on the beach and stuff. And it's nice to do it, but I think there's a lot of ups and downs. And so now I want to give you sort of the honest breakdown of what it's been like to travel the world while running a business, because there are a lot of pros and cons, and it can be flashy and awesome, but in reality, it's just like normal life. There's a lot of ups and a lot of downs, and it's only suitable for some people who want a certain type of lifestyle. So today I want to talk to you about the different ways to do this and kind of what they're like and the different people who might be most interested in each different style of actually traveling. Because pretty much everybody says, what do you like to do? I love to travel. Everybody says they love to travel, but there's different ways of doing it. And I think there's different styles of travel that are suitable to different people based on their personality types and their goals. So let's talk about that. So here are some main realizations from having spent over 2 years traveling the world while running a business. Number one, the biggest realization is that there's actually a variety of styles for traveling and running a business, or specifically traveling in general. And so I kind of broke these down into 4 types. So 4 types of styles of traveling are, number one, the vacationer. So this is a person who probably lives in their home country. They have sort of a traditional lifestyle. Maybe they take a month or a couple weeks off a year to go travel to other parts of the same country or a different country altogether. The second type that's also pretty common is the backpacker. This is oftentimes younger people who sort of don't really have a job necessarily. They may not, but they pick up, have some belongings, and they go travel the world on the cheap. And they oftentimes don't work while they do. And of course, it's a gray area. There are some people who sort of travel like backpackers, but also do have a business. But sort of, in my mind, at least, I characterize this as people who are often younger and leave and try and live on the cheap. And then number 3 is the adventurer or constant traveler. So this is a person who, they don't necessarily live like a backpacker. They don't just scrape by. They might have a lot of savings or consistent business that they run, but they're kind of always on the move. They move frequently. They don't really have necessarily a clear home base. And I know other entrepreneurs who are like this. And then there's number 4, which I called the homemaker, which is the type of person who picks a certain place as their home base. And they might travel around their home base, but they pick a place for a certain duration of time that is their quote-unquote home country, home city, what have you. And they live there and they choose to move on maybe several months or even a couple of years at a time. And they're living abroad and living in these different places. And that's personally my favorite style. I like to pick a place to live in for at least 3 to 6 months, maybe travel around that place. But I find it's very difficult to constantly be moving and get anything done. And that point leads into some of the other major realizations, which is that everybody says they love travel, but living abroad full time is definitely not for everyone because it's just plain hard. Kind of as I was just saying, it can be very difficult to get things done. And so the third main realization is that travel will not make you happier than you already are. It does not necessarily automatically increase your level of happiness. Even if you sort of daydream about it and imagine how awesome it would be, it's not a long-term increase in your happiness level. It might be a lifestyle you enjoy, it might be suitable to you, but it's not like, bam, you're going to be happy as soon as you start traveling. Those last 2 might sound obvious, but they're worth mentioning because I think, at least I know for myself, before I started traveling, I had this sort of subtle assumption that everything's awesome once you start to go abroad, that it's this picturesque kind of lifestyle where everything's amazing. And it is really great in a lot of ways, but it's just not something that it's not like living out a Hallmark card, of course. It's got its ups and its downs. And so let's get into that now. So the overall best description to sort of summarize my opinion and my experience of traveling and running a business that I heard in one sentence was at a conference last year. I believe it was Jacob Poole. He said something along the lines of, you can't grow your business while traveling. You can at best maintain it. You have to pick a place and stay in that place to actually grow a business. And I find that to be very, very true. If you're traveling around, it's very, very difficult to progress and grow and scale things. And if you're lucky, you can maintain it. Even that could be a challenge. But that's just a sort of a summary of those of you who might be abroad already or might be thinking of going abroad and are entrepreneurs. It's actually very, very challenging to travel frequently, to be that backpacker or that constant travel and really concentrate on your business because there's so many distractions. But let's break down the specific pros and cons of this kind of lifestyle, of traveling in general, and specifically how that relates to business. So first off, on a positive note, here is why traveling a lot and living abroad is incredibly awesome. So number one, you grow more than you ever thought possible, just from the diversity of experiences, from the kinds of people that you interact with. There's just so much going on most of the time that it really facilitates personal development, and I found that really valuable. And that also is related to the fact that you become more resilient. You have to put up with a lot of changing environments and certain kinds of difficulties that you don't have to experience in daily life. Because daily life, when you're living at quote unquote home, is relatively consistent in most cases. So there's a kind of resilience that you develop from the ever-changing environment, which is insanely valuable. You also have experiences. This is the one that everybody thinks about. You have experiences that many others only dream of. You go hike the Himalayas, or you take pictures of crazy things that you have seen in National Geographic. There's all kinds of experiences like that which are truly amazing. And the interesting thing is that it can be in a normal day when most people picture it as something that only happens as part of a dream vacation where you pay $10,000 to go take a week and go do something like that. Another major perk is that you can often live a better lifestyle on a lower budget, depending on where you're from and where you're going to. For example, if you live in the States, especially if you're from someplace like California, there's a lot of places that are amazing to live in, and they're so much cheaper to live in. And you'd be surprised. There's pretty much a place on every single continent that's beautiful, it's amazing, it's really enjoyable to live, and it's quite a bit cheaper than where you're currently living. Travel also helps you see the world from a clearer perspective. There's a lot of assumptions and elements of your current perspective that it's almost impossible to be aware of without actually having that challenge, without being around people from other cultures, without interacting with people who have a different perspective. In fact, I know a lot of people who have not traveled frequently. They imagine that there's a lot of differences about going abroad, and what I find is that oftentimes the differences that you expect are not really that different, but there's all kinds of differences that you didn't even know to think about, whether that has to do with culture's worldview based on their religion, the concept of like independence, a concept of group dynamics, or perspectives of government. There's all kinds of variety in the world, and seeing it from your own country's perspective is very different from really understanding the way different cultures operate and see the world. And lastly, one of the main perks that I have found as a result of frequently traveling is it's actually a lot easier to avoid getting caught in that sort of keeping up with the Joneses type mentality. Now, there is one way this actually does happen, which I find can be common among location-independent entrepreneurial types, and that's the sort of travel binging where everybody else is traveling and you're not traveling a lot. You're abroad, but you're not traveling as much, and so you feel the sort of competitive urge to travel more like other people, things like that. But in general, there's much less incentive and push to accumulate lots of stuff. And I find that really awesome because I don't want to be pressured to do that because I know how much that holds some people down. So anyways, those are some quick perks that are really distinctly beneficial, and I've really appreciated it as I've been abroad. But now let's get into some of the downsides and talk about some of the challenges so you can have an accurate picture of what it really looks like. First off, I already kind of mentioned this, but it's extremely difficult to maintain routines and habits because every time you travel, all of a sudden everything's different, from your sleep schedule to where you grab your morning coffee to the type of diet you have to the types of people you're around. Everything just changes like that, and it's very challenging then to set up routines and habits that'll see you through. And so as a result, it can be difficult to be productive. Another challenge is that small things like finding a place to eat, finding a gym to work out in, all these things which are very small everyday occurrences, and they're very easy to manage when you live in a given place. All of these things take 10 times as long every time you go to a new place. You have to find that gym and hope that it's not randomly closed. You have to go find a place to eat. And then if you have a specific diet, it's even harder to find a place to eat. All kinds of things like that all of a sudden become challenges where they weren't challenges before. Another challenge is that it can also be lonely. Because you're abroad, you may be away from your friends and your family, especially oftentimes you'll end up traveling solo for at least some stretch, and then you're by yourself in this foreign country where nobody speaks your language. You can have a sense of loneliness that comes from that. And I think that's something that we don't really picture when we picture going abroad. So that's a real challenge as well. Another major consideration is just the sort of random, frustrating headaches that come from a tumultuous environment. For example, you can lose entire days trying to get from one place to another. You know, your flights get delayed, the bus gets canceled, you get stuck in a certain place. Things like that are relatively common when you're traveling frequently. And also in Southeast Asia, the internet has a habit of randomly giving out, especially in the Philippines in my experience. And so those kinds of things really can trip you up and can hurt maybe your business, or maybe you need to get on an important call, but you can't. Those kinds of frustrations can really impact your lifestyle and your experience. And one good example of this is actually just yesterday, I arrived back in Thailand from Taiwan, and I got held and interrogated by Thai immigration, and even actually a little bit threatened for over 2 hours upon arriving at the airport. And it was a really unfortunate experience. But it's kind of, the next day, I was, of course, not very happy then. But, of course, the next day, it's like, well, that kind of thing is the price you pay as you travel frequently. Stuff like that just happens, and you got to take it in stride. And, yes, it's very frustrating and annoying, but that's also sort of what then becomes a perk, because you become more resilient as a result. And the final main downside that I have for living abroad and traveling frequently is that you often have to deal with not having things that you take for granted now. And the best example I have of this is going from the States to the Philippines, because in the States, you have free Amazon 2-day shipping or what have you. And that's the most amazing thing ever. And I hope you appreciate that if you're in the States, because all of a sudden then you're in a place like the Philippines or even Thailand. And if you want to order just about anything online, usually it comes from like the States or something like that. And it takes at least 3 weeks, if not up to like 6 weeks, to get just about anything that you order online. And that's a huge annoyance versus, free 2-day shipping. But it's something you might take for granted now if you've had it for a long time. So there's little things like that you may not even think about, which all of a sudden become a little bit more difficult or a little bit more frustrating. And so that's some of the trade-offs that you have to evaluate when you think about traveling. And I think a great way to sort of sum it up is that traveling is a lot like a roller coaster. There's lots of ups, lots of downs. It's not all glorious, but you definitely have a greater diversity of experiences. You have really amazing experiences that you would never have back home, and you also have really, really frustrating or difficult experiences that you also probably wouldn't really have back home. And so thinking about what level of consistency you want in your life, and also how much do you value things like life experiences versus quickly growing your business, these are the kinds of things you have to think about to make sure that you make the right decision for you, for your lifestyle, your business, and your goals. And so as a result, you can make a decision about what is the best travel lifestyle for you. Are you the vacationer who just wants to grind it out and really focus on growing your business as quickly as possible, and then you take a month off a year to go travel? Or are you a backpacker and you just want to use your current savings, just pick it up, live cheaply, and go where you can? Do you want to constantly travel? Do you want to be that homemaker who picks a home base in Paris and then Dubai and then Shanghai? There's all different lifestyles, and they all have their different pros and cons. And so I hope this episode has given you a little bit about what it really looks like to travel and run a business at the same time. Some of the ways that can be really amazing, but also really challenging at times. And I know, again, people sort of make it a flashy kind of thing. I've made videos that are nice little travel videos that are well edited, But that, of course, doesn't give you the sort of full experience. The footage filmed to make that travel video is edited down from lots of boring or uninteresting or annoying experiences. You film the best parts, edit it down, and then other people see that and then also wish they were living that lifestyle. So hopefully this has been a very honest and clear breakdown of what it really looks like, and hopefully that helps you make a better decision about what lifestyle that you want to lead. Hey entrepreneurs and experts, I just wanted to thank you for listening to this episode, and I hope you learned at least one new big idea that helps you evolve your skills and gets you closer to monetizing your expertise and creating that successful knowledge business. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes and Stitcher, and check out myepodcast.com for all episodes as well as the tips and tricks mentioned in this episode. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.